I'm glad you're joining again this week. I'm talking about the topic of temptation. Yeah, temptation, something that every single one of us deal with, every single one of us face. Now, we all have temptations, but they're not all in the same areas. And what I'm talking about this week is how Satan knows that. He knows exactly where you are tempted. He knows exactly where I'm tempted. You know, the topic of my message is tailor-made temptations. Just like a seamstress or a tailor will use a measuring, whatever you call this, they use these to measure people, to tailor-make something for them. Well, Satan works the same way. He has a tailor-made plan to tempt you away from God's plan for your life. It's not, coincidental. The areas where you keep falling into temptation, they're not coincidental. Satan has been watching you. He has been sizing you up and making note of every area of your life where you suffer weaknesses and temptations. I just picture him with this clipboard watching you and making note of all those areas where you give into a temptation, where you start to think about something that's not right. He makes note of it and he says, I'm going to bring that back into her life over and over and over until what? Until you fall for it. And that's his plan. And we have to remember, Satan doesn't show up at your front door looking like this. He does not wear the red costume and the pitchfork and show up on Friday the 13th saying, I'm here to deceive you. You're not going to fall for that. That's not tempting in the least. Satan knows that. In fact, the temptations that he brings to you and that he brings to me, they feel good, they sound good, they taste good, they look good, they sound good. And that's how Satan works. He works through the 5 physical senses, through what you hear, through what you smell, with what you taste, with what you touch, with what you look at. That's how Satan works. Now, if he can get you looking at something long enough, he knows that your entire life will start to go in that direction. You'll begin to desire that thing that you start giving the most attention to. If he can get your ears listening to something long enough, he knows you'll eventually fall for it. Our senses are so powerful. They can control your life and they can lead you away from God's plan. It's amazing. That's how Satan works, is through the 5 physical senses. You could be watching something on TV. Let's say you're just watching a show that it's a pretty good show. You like it. Maybe it's a weekly show that you watch. And there's people, committing adultery or they're sleeping with their boyfriend or girlfriend. And it's not that bad. You're just watching it. But little by little, these thoughts start to get on the inside of you of how boring your own marriage is, how it's not exciting like what you're watching. And then you begin to think about someone you shouldn't be thinking about. Little by little, thoughts are planted into your mind. Is that coincidental? Not one bit. In fact, Satan's got that clipboard and he's watching what you're watching and he makes note of it. Think about the sense of smell, which they say is the most powerful in memory recognition, is the sense of smell. You can smell something and instantly it takes you back to a memory, to a person, to an event. Think about it. I can think of certain colognes that instantly remind me of old boyfriends. I remember one boyfriend I had, he gave me this little teddy bear and he drenched it in his cologne. Well, to this day, if I were to smell that cologne, it would make me think of him. I'm not going to say his name just in case he's watching. Don't want him to think I'm thinking about him. But you can walk through the mall and go through the cologne section, smell cologne, and it reminds you of somebody. Well, Satan knows that. He wants you being drawn away through your 5 physical senses in any way he can. You think about music. Satan will use music, the powerful sense of your hearing. Have you ever thought about how songs, they can take you back in time, big time. They can remind you of how you felt about somebody, what you were thinking, what you were wearing, where you were. It's amazing. There's certain songs that instantly take me back to high school or college or when I first got married. It's amazing. Well, Satan works through the 5 physical senses. And I've heard of people who it started by listening to old music that reminded them of the past, and it took them back to how they were feeling, how they were carefree, didn't have all the responsibilities they have now, and eventually they left their spouse. Well, keep in mind, Satan is watching you constantly. He is looking for any area in your life where you have a little bit of a weakness. And he says, okay, he has a weakness for alcohol. Every time he's around people that he works with, he's too embarrassed to resist the beer or the alcohol, whatever. So I'll make arrangements for him to be around his coworkers more and more and more so that he's tempted to give in to drinking. He makes note of that. Or she has a weakness for food. Well, I want this addiction for food to absolutely destroy her life, her self-esteem, her health, her marriage, her finances. So I'll just arrange for her to be tempted more and more by food. That's not coincidental. Now keep in mind, temptation, we're all tempted in some area. Some may be with pornography, some may be with sleeping around, some may be with food. There's so many different temptations. You know, Satan, he knows if you're tempted with sex, if you're tempted to sleep with people before you're married or outside of marriage, he knows that. And he knows, okay, every time she's alone with her boyfriend, she's tempted to sleep with him. Well, what's he do? He just brings more and more opportunity for you to be alone with him. Why? So you'll fall for it. He wants you to feel disgraced. He wants you to feel guilty. Because a lot of times when we give in to temptation, immediately comes the guilt. And then when we feel so much guilt, we start to avoid God. Because we feel so ashamed, we start to just ignore God. We're mad at ourselves because we've promised God we wouldn't do this again. We've promised ourselves, but we just keep giving into it. Exactly what Satan's hoping. He wants you to turn from God. He wants you to be so embarrassed to go to God. I want you to know you can go to God 500 times a day if you need to ask for forgiveness, to cry out to Him for help. God will never turn His back on you. No matter how many times you've been tempted in the past, He is there for you to not only forgive you, but to just hold you in His arms and just say, I'm going to help you get through this. I'm here for you. God doesn't expect you to get through this on your own. So I want you to realize where you're weak. Know your weaknesses. Discover those, because Satan knows them. Now you need to know them. Now in this series that I did called Tailor-Made Temptations, I teach you exactly how to discover those weaknesses in your life, and not only that, but how to stand against them so that you don't have to spend your entire life going, I just can't resist food. I just can't resist sex with my boyfriend. I just can't resist marijuana. Whatever it is, you don't have to fall for that for the rest of your life. So I preach from experience, and I want to teach you. If you or somebody you know is in a situation where you've tried everything to resist this temptation and you just need some help, then get this message, Tailor-Made Temptations. You can just order it right there at the web store, and let me send it to you as soon as possible, because God wants your eyes open to the truth so you no longer fall for Satan's traps. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.